Welcome back to the second part of our After Effects tutorial. This time we're going to deal with text elements and graphic elements. If you have missed the first part in which I kind of gave an introduction to After Effects, I'm going to put a link to the first part in the top right corner. So this time I'm going to start again by closing the window. This time we're going to start with a new composition, not from footage, but directly by entering the composition's parameters. So I'm going to choose new composition, and what I want is I would like to have an full HD composition in the size of 1920 by 1080. So I can use a preset up here. So I'm going to use a preset HD TV 1080p 25 frames per second. That's the European standard. If you want to work with 30 frames per second, you could as well choose 30 or the 29.97. I'm going to use the 25 frames, so that is 1920 by 1080. Every one of those pixels is a little square. Frame rate of 25 frames per second, and the total length of my sequence of my composition, is from 0, and it has a length of 20 seconds. That's enough. Maybe let's make it 30. So that we are on the safe side and don't have to change it later. Okay, that will create our new composition that is called Comp1. And this time we're not going to import some of our 10-second clips. This time we're going to start with something else. And we're going to start with text elements. So we're going to leave the black background on our composition, and we're going to create different text elements. So up here, in the little icons, here is a type tool, and with the type tool you can start by typing something. I'm going to create a piece of text that's called new text, for example. This new text, when you use the selection tool in the front here, so when you select it, its parameters can be seen on the right side. There's an extra parameter dialog for character parameters. I'm going to make it a little bit larger. So here is the size. I'm gonna choose a font style that is not a serif. I'm going to use a sans serif font style, and I'm also going to use a little bit bolder one. So like this, Verdana bold. Let's go for 100 pixel size, so that should be the size of the text in pixels, 100 pixel. So here it is, and now when you create, if you want, you can also use a different, you can change the color. So the color is made out of, in this case, a fill color. So you have a fill color and a stroke color. So if you want to have the text in color filled, then you have to change the fill color, purple. And if you want it stroke, you can switch to two so that you have strokes. When you have strokes, you need an outline. You can define how thick the line is and so on. I'm going to keep it the way that I just want to fill it and don't have any stroke color. So here's my filled text. So now let's look at the parameters here on the left in our timeline. Our timeline is 20 seconds long, and by adding the text, let's bring my timeline to the zoom out all the way, and then you see my text has now been added as an element for 30 seconds. We know that we can move it in time, and you will see that the text ended at 0, and if I move it the other way, it also ended at 30. So that's a total length of 30 seconds. Let me use the Shift key to snap to the beginning of the composition, and the end of the text key I'm bringing in. So I want to see this text only, let's say, 4 seconds. I'm going to bring in the text, so now it's only a 4-second text bar. I'm also going to move it away from the beginning so we see clearly how long it is. So it's from 1 second to 5 seconds. It's about a 4-second piece. So that means now at the beginning there's no text visible, and here's the text visible. After the 4 seconds, the text will be invisible again. If I want to show it one more time, all I need to do is bring in a new layer. So in this case, for example, duplicate it, that's Control D, and bring the new text in a little bit later. So then we have the first text, then a little break, and then the second text comes in. So on 2 different layers. But that's not the thing I wanted to show you. Let's delete the text one more time. So I only have 1. The parameters of the text can be seen in the front. If I open everything, we have the usual transform. So we know what's in there. There's the anchor point. Let me get here, text visible. The anchor point of the text is usually on the bottom left corner. Then we have the position, of course, position on screen. That will change if I move it to any different location. The scale is 100% because the scale of the text is defined by the size of the fonts. But it can also be scaled here up and down. Okay, also let me reset that. Reset it to 100. So. Then we have the rotation. Here's the rotation angle. We talked about this in the previous lesson already. So here's the, here I can reset it to 0. And the opacity, for example, I can use to make a text blend in or fade out. So if I want to blend in a text, let me quickly show you that I have to animate the opacity. So I would bring my time indicator with Shift key so it snaps to the beginning. Then I'm gonna hit animate hit the animate the stopwatch at opacity. It already created a key here, but I'm gonna change something too, and that is the opacity to 0. Then I go 1 second ahead in time and create a second key, and that I will make 100, so totally opaque. So while it's totally transparent in the beginning, it's totally opaque after 1 second. If that went too fast, make sure you go back to the first session, to the first part where I explained in a little bit more detail how to create keyframes. So I created those 2 keyframes. The first one says 0 opacity. The second one says 100% opacity. You see the pop-up windows show you that as well. So now I have kind of blended in the text, and it just stops after about 4 seconds. The text also has some other parameters, and for example, the source of the text, what it's written there, it has some path options, it has some other options, what character is used, blah, 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 so on and so on. So you could go through all of those parameters, but let's just keep it as it is, a simple text element. So, for example, yeah, okay, so that is how to animate, for example, the blending in of the text or the fading out. Let's quickly create 2 other text elements, either by copying, because when I copy it, it has the big advantage that it also copies the fading in, or by creating a new one. I'm going to go for the clone version, so I'm going to hit Control D for duplicate. That creates a second text, and the second text I'm going to make it start like I don't know, 2 seconds later. And then to change the new text, oh, let me also edit. Oh, sorry, move the second text away. So. And how to edit it with double click, new text is created this way, and I'm going to create 1 more copy, duplicate the is created, and the third copy, bring it here, double click it, and I write over time. So now I have 3 text elements, and they are created, they fade in, and with about 2 seconds delay, everyone is fading in. How can I make those 3 layers now end all at the same time? Because the first one kicks in very soon, and then at a certain point it will be blended out or will stop being shown. How can I make those layers end at the same time? I just have to select the layer and take the end point and move it so it ends all at the same time. The best way, of course, to do it with Shift so that they snap. Now they fade in independently and then they all end at the same time. Okay? Why have I created this? I've created this to show you an important concept in After Effects. And that is, so my composition, the project that I'm working on right now is called Comp 1. This is the one that I'm working on. That's, so to say, my final composition. This is where all the elements are created. Now I'm going to show you something that is called to pre-compose certain layers. So I have 3 pieces here, 3 pieces of layer already, and it is quite annoying that they always are on 3 different layers, and I would like to bring them into one layer because later on I will just use all kinds of other things below. So that is called pre-compose. Therefore you select the layers that you want to pre-compose together. It's not like it's kind of like a group, which you can open later on. So a pre-composition. So you select the 3 and you do a right click and choose pre-compose. So select the 3 layers and choose pre-compose, and it will ask you what is the name of the pre-composition, and I'm going to call it text fading in. Text fading in, and we'll move all attributes, blah, blah, blah. So now you will see my composition, Comp 1, which I see here. Comp 1 is what I see here, looks exactly the same. It blends in the text and then they all fade out at the same time. But right now it is only 1 layer left in my composition window. And you can see it's not a text layer, it is a composition. So I have made out of those 3 text layers, I made a whole new composition, which I call text fading in. And that is now here. This composition can be moved, can be rotated, can be blended in, out, and so on again. So that is the pre-composition. Now what if I need to edit the text, for example? If I want to edit the text, I can always double click. So here's my composition, Comp 1, that's the final. But if I double click the text fading in, I now see the text fading in composition. Also my timeline has 1 for the composition and 1 for the pre-composition text fading in. So if I need to change something here, for example, make all 3 layers a little bit shorter or something like this, I just change it in the text fading in, and as soon as I know I have to do something more drastic, let's make it really short like this. Now if I go back into my Comp 1, into the final composition, you don't see any changes here. That's fine. But if you change your composition there and hit play, you notice they blend in, blend in, blend in, and right away go. So that is the changes that I did to the pre-composition have been updated in the final one. Is the concept kind of clear? I create, you select your layers that you want to group together in a pre-comp, then hit selected, right-click pre-composition, and put it into a pre-composition. That kind of cleans up your final composition and helps you to keep things in order. So the next concept, I'm going back into my text fading in composition. So I'm going into my text fading in. Also here's the text fading in. And I'm going to make it longer again because I want to see it for a while, my text. What I'm going to show you now is the following. What if my text element need to be No, I'm gonna do something else. Sorry, I'm not gonna do it in the text fading in. I'm gonna work in the composition one because I'm gonna do a pre-comp one more time to show it. So in the composition one, I'm gonna create something else, and this time I'm gonna create a only one letter. So new text element. Let's call it. I don't know what. H. So here's an H. To make it a little bit different from the other text, I'm going to choose a different color. So, and maybe also a different size. So here's one letter. And what I would like to show you is the following. Sorry, didn't want to move that. Here's my, let me turn that off, so I'm not gonna click on it all the time. I'm now going to copy my text element, so Control D, and move it next to it, and one more copy, and move it next to it. Let's just change the letter. Let's call it hot. Okay, 3 layers and the 3-letter word hot. What I wanted to show you is the following. I would like to, when somebody moves the letter H, that the letter O and letter T will follow. Just a simple thing. I'm going to link the letter O and the letter T to my letter H. So the H is the parent and the 2 other letters are their children, the children. So how does that work? You simply select this one, select any of the children, and now you link it to the other one. That is pretty simple. You only need to select the letter O and change the parent. If you know what the layer name is, and here it's pretty simple because the layer for letter O is called O and T is T. So I'm gonna change the letter O and choose a parent, and that is H. And for the letter T, I'm gonna choose a parent, that is letter H. So the parent and link. If you don't know the layer's name, you could also, when you are on selected letter O, you could use the pick whip that is placed next here to the parent. You can take it and drag it onto letter H, then it will write the same thing. So now all the transformations that I place on my letter H will also be transferred to the 2 others. So, for example, if I change the position of letter H, so P, see, left, right, up, down, the 2 others follow. Or, not position, let's go for rotation. If I rotate the letter H, the O and T follow. So it just looks like as if it's one word, but it's not because the letters are only linked. So that means I can anytime move the letter O or letter T individually. Let's do that quickly. Let's just do something stupid. So let's take letter O, take its position, hit animate. So I'll add letter O, P for position, and hit animate. That means now this point has been stored. So let's take it up a little bit, further down a little bit. So just randomly move it around. So like this. And the same thing with letter T. I'm going to hit P for position. I also animate position for letter T. So there. I know it doesn't make much sense. So Now I individually animated the two letters to do something. Okay, and now still when I select my letter H and animate the position of the letter H, beginning, animate at position, and for example I'm going to animate it, oops, here it stays, then goes there and there. That's it. You can see that they both follow, but they still have their individual movements, just for 6 seconds or so. Okay, so that is the linking. And now there's even more to that, because usually you would not link elements to another element, but the most important thing is to use a dummy object to link something to the dummy object. So if I want to have those 3 letters, for example, linked to something, I would not link it to another letter, but I would link it to a dummy object. How do you create such a dummy object? The dummy object is called a null object, and the null object can be created either with a right-click into the layer, right-click, new null object. You could also go File, New, Layer, New, Null Object, and so on. So that is here, right-click, New, Null Object. And the null object is a thing that you can move, rotate, scale, has all the same things. Anchor point at the top left, a position wherever you place it on screen, a scale. It doesn't make much sense because it's invisible anyway, so if it's twice as big or small, doesn't matter. But when you have scale, then it also applies the scale to its children. So the null object is the uber parent for everything. So also make sure that now all the 3 letters are linked to the null. So you select all the 3 layers, use the pick whip and place it on null. So now all the parent here in the list. If you don't have the list, there's different forms that you can show. Maybe it's just blended out, or there's different modes here but the linking is always visible. So here's different modes of how much we see in the list. Yeah, but the parent link is always visible. So all the 3 layers have their parent, the null object, and now if I select the null, of course, and then move it, it will go places. But still, the other ones are doing whatever they do. See, now the O and T are not following the H anymore because they're not linked to the H. They're now linked all to the null, so they do their individual movement steady relative to the null, and the H is doing this sine curve I did before. The next thing I would like to show you with text is how to create an effect on the text. But first, before we do this, let me quickly take my null object, my T, O, and H, and pre-compose it one more time. Remember, here's a pre-composition from the text fading in that I just turned invisible. To make things simpler, I also take the 4 layers here, right-click, and create a new pre-composition that I call hot flying. Okay, so now also hot flying is its own pre-composition. If I need to adjust it, I can double click it and it will open in the timeline, and it will open here parallel next to the composition. I'm going to turn it invisible because I don't need it right now. The next thing is the type effect. And the type effect that we're going to place on text is pretty simple. You have seen it many times in movies. For example, if a new scene is established, so as in an establishing shot, you see an army base somewhere in the desert, and then usually you have some text in the bottom of the screen, and it looks like as if the text is written with a typewriter, and it does like tick, 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 and it types the name of the army base or something like this. I'm going to show you how to do that. First, we need a piece of text, and I'm going to type Johnson Air Force Base in New Mexico, NM. That is too large, of course, my font. So here, I'm not gonna play with what kind of font they would use by writing Johnson Air Force Base, New Mexico. I just put it in the bottom of my screen. And what I want is this text should not just stand there as it is. It should appear as if it's typed with a typewriter. And to do that, we're going to use an effect. We're going to use a lot of effects later on, but this is, so to say, the first one to use. An effect is, first of all the effects and presets are stored here on the right side under effects. They are in different categories, so you could go in here and try to find it where it is. What I usually prefer is to know the effects by their name and then search for it. And the effect that we're looking for right now is called typewriter. The typewriter effect kind of creates this typewriter thing. So here's the typewriter effect, and what you want to do is you take it and pull it down, either drop it onto the window. I don't like that a lot. I rather place it on the layer, because here I can accidentally drop it on a different layer. I'm going to pick which one, so I'm going to drop it onto the Johnson Air Force Base. And suddenly my text disappeared. Where did it go, the effect? The effect, of course, went underneath the text element, and now before we only had transform, oh no, we had text and transform. Now we have text, transform, and we have an animator added to it. Where did it go? Animator, range selector, start. No, doesn't matter, but I created 2 keyframes. And those 2 keyframes here, you can see them here at the range selector. So that is the start of the typing and the end of the typing. Right now, usually I think it is 1 word per frame. Am I right? Yes. So every frame, 1 word will, every frame, 1 letter will be typed. That is pretty fast. Imagine that is, I don't know, 20 letters. That would mean only 20 frames. So it's pretty fast. The speed of the typing depends on how long, how large the difference between those 2 keyframes is. So if I take the second keyframe, sorry, cannot use it. Here's the start value at 0 and the end value at 100. So the second one, let's move it out. That means now it's slower typing. So let's play it. Here's the preview and hit play. So that is pretty slow typing. It takes 6 seconds to type the whole word. If you want to have it faster, let's go for 2 seconds. And here it is. Okay, so once again, let me show you how to do it. You just find the effect. No, you first type. Let me get away. First type your text. First type your text. Place it wherever you want it. Then go to your effects and presets, find the typewriter. So you just start to type and you get the typewriter, and you drag it down onto your layer, and it will automatically create an animation that types your text. It usually starts where your time indicator is right now, but the best way is to open it up to find those two keys that give you the animation. And the key here, it's under the animator and range selector, and here's the start and end. That is the start of the typing, so if you want it from the very beginning, you should move it to the beginning, and the second one defines the typing speed. And then you can preview and okay, that was the simple typewriter effect. So let's combine what we did so far into one little exercise, and therefore I'm going to create, I'm cleaning up the whole thing. If I delete all the compositions here, everything is gone. I'm going to create a new composition, same settings, 1920 by 1080, 25 frames per second, 30 seconds, that's fine. So here's what I would like to do. I would like to make some text appear that is typed. It doesn't appear fade in, but it gets typed in, and then I would like to animate it a little bit. So the first thing is I would like to start with a null object, not to see something because the null object is invisible, and I'm also taking the null object, make it larger so it looks like a kind of rectangle, and it will be animated around this point. So the first thing that I'm doing is let's get the null object. Let's get some text into the invisible frame. What should I build? What should I build? Let's just use a font tool, and I'm typing build. I'm gonna drag it larger. So this is just scaling it up, or you can also use a larger font, but I would like to drag it up so it kind of fills this frame. Build, then I'm going to make a copy. The copy then says your, and build. So a little bit smaller. Build your, and we're going to build a new composition, so I'm going to call it build your comp. Again, Control D for duplicate, select everything and call it build your comp. Like this. Okay, so I'm going to sort the layer, build your comp, so in the order that it appears, and I'm going to take 1, 2, 3. I'm going to let 1 second pass till the first word starts, then maybe like 1.5 seconds, and like this. So I'm gonna put it into like a stair-like order. And now I would like those words not to just appear, but I would like them to appear in the effect of the typewriter. So I'm going to Effects and Presets and find the typewriter and place it on Build. Now, opening up the text, I should have brought it to the beginning. Here's my text, the animator that I added, and the range selector here. And I'm going to place the start of the typing to the start of the layer, and then the end of the typing to the start of the second layer. I can avoid all that by bringing my time indicator now to the beginning of the second clip, and now I'm going to pull the typewriter also to the second one. So, and then it automatically starts here. So I'm going to take typewriter and put it onto your. So now also your starts to type your. And comp, I'm going to move it in time a little bit, or maybe also adjust the range of the animator here a little bit, so it's finished. Oops. So it's finished when the next clip starts, and close it, and also place the typewriter on the third word on comp. Okay, that's a little bit slower. And now at the end of my timeline here, at the end when the whole word is built, I'm going to end all my three layers. The problem is when I would need to take the end of my timeline, the end of my layer, and move it in. The problem it is somewhere outside of my timeline. So I would have to move the whole thing in and then make it shorter and back out again. That's why there's also a function where I can split a layer. I'll show you with comp. So what I want is it types in, and then after a couple seconds I would like to stop all the layers there. I can select a layer, for example the comp layer. At this point, here's my time indicator, and when you go to edit, you will find split layers, and that would automatically like create a copy but split it at this point. And now I just take the copy and delete it. That kind of split it up the text, and I can do it automatically. Select not two at the same time. So I have two layers selected, and edit split layer, and I create two splits. They're already selected, and I just need to delete them. So now the three layers, they all end at the same time. To do something else then. And now I would like to move the whole block around. I could pre-compose my build your comp and create one composition out of it, but I'm going to use the null layer concept. So I would like that the three words follow whatever I do to the null object. So I select all three layers and make sure their parent is the null object. I'm using the pick whip here and bring it onto null, and then all the three change their parent to the null layer. Now I can animate the null layer to do something, so I can move around, for example, or I can even rotate it, and it will follow. So whatever you want to do, that's all up to you. So rotate something, or can also scale it up or move it to different positions. That doesn't matter. It all follows the null object. Okay? Good. Then let's go to something else, and that is we're not working now with text elements, but we're trying to work with a few graphic elements. The first graphic element that I would like to include into my composition is one that I got from Illustrator. So I have Illustrator open here in the background, and I am quickly creating a new document. And the new document, you can pick all kinds of presets here, and there's an extra one for film and video where you find all the common fill formats. For example, also the 1920 by 1080p format that I have here. So I'm going to use that to create a new composition here. I'm just creating it using it to create some simple elements. Let's go for a simple circle. A simple circle. It's filled in white. Let's not fill it in white. Don't fill it at all, and use some green line. For the green lines, I'm also making it a little bit thicker so we see something. Here it is. And what else? Maybe with the pen tool, something. And yeah. Something like this. And what else? Let's try another rectangle over here. The rectangle I'm gonna fill in color, and the fill color will be, I don't know, reddish something. Good. This is just a way to show you how things can be imported from Illustrator. So the best way to do this is not by using copy-paste and bringing it in. The best way to place something like this is by actually placing the Illustrator file directly into After Effects. If you want to sort things out a little bit, you could also put it on different layers. Let me quickly do that. I'm going to create a new layer here and bring the rectangle on a new layer. This is all in one layer and this is on another layer. And I'm going to save as my file as a Illustrator file. So, and now back to my After Effects composition. So I would like to place elements from my Illustrator file now onto my After Effects composition, and that is done directly by bringing it into my project window. So it should be placed somewhere on my desktop. Sorry about that. So there it is. So what I did, I pulled it into my project window, and now it asks me, how do you want to import the footage? Do you want to bring all the layers merged together as one, or want to choose a specific layer? I want to choose a specific layer, layer 1, that was the circle with the line. So I'm going to use layer 1, and there it is. And I'm going to do the same thing again. And this time I'm going to choose the layer and layer 2. So now I brought it in on 2 different layers. So I can anytime select an element here, pull it onto the timeline, and the size stays the same because we were working on the same 1920 by 1080 size in Illustrator. And here's my element that I've created, and I'm also bringing in the other one there, and that should be my red rectangle. So let's have a look. What are those things that are brought in? First, let me use the pre-comp again, because all these build my comp and so on, the text link to the null layer, I want to have it. I don't want to have it in my composition right now. So I'm going to select everything, make a right click and pre-compose it into a text, one that's called text, and I'm going to turn it off quickly so it's out of our way. So here are our 2 layers. The 2 layers are now linked Illustrator files. When I open it, I can do all kinds of stuff with them. I can, of course, scale them in all kinds of forms. I can move them to different positions. I can change the anchor point. I can rotate them, and I change the opacity, make it fade in, fade out, and so on. So let me go for a reset here. So there it is. Okay, and the same thing over here. So we're not talking about the element actually, the elements that are actually I can change the rectangle or the color and so on, but I can just change it as if it was a piece of video. So, but look at it. It looks different. Let me close that. It looks different because it is in a square bracket, and it doesn't look like a regular layer, like a piece of video that I have placed and so on. So the Illustrator file still works like a pre-composition. So so the pre-composition, if I don't have it open here, the text and so on, I could always double click it. Actually, I have never tried what happens when you double click it, because I would usually do it the following way. I would go back to Illustrator and change it there. But let's see what happens if you double click it. Okay, the double click opens the footage here in this folder and let's see what we can do with it. Not much, we can just see it. Okay, let's do it the way I was used to, and that is going back to Illustrator. Sorry. Here it is. And change something. So that means, for example, here in this one, the two lines, this line and this line, I would like to make them thicker. That is double thickness and a different color. So here's an orange. And this one also should not have a fill, but a stroke that is like way thicker. Okay, so I just changed that, and when I save my Illustrator file, that should usually, it did, see? As soon as I went back to After Effects, it automatically updated my form. So that is always linked to your Illustrator file, and you can anytime change it there and then do something with it. Even if you scaled it weirdly, so here's a weird scaling down and down like this. Even if I go back to Illustrator now and what else? Change the color of the ring. Make it blue and maybe thicker. Save it in Illustrator. And if you wait a bit, it will soon change. Did I save it? Yes. Oh, it did. Yes, blue. It's already blue, not green anymore. Okay, so it automatically updates also there. So that is a really good way, if you are used to work in Illustrator, to create your graphics, create your logos, your line art and things like this. Bring it into, save it in as an Illustrator file and bring it directly into After Effects. The best way is to place it on different layers so that you can choose one layer here. Otherwise, it will take the whole drawing and place it in our composition. The same way, by the way, also works with pictures. If you have a picture, let's quickly do that. If you have a picture and you want to place it on, there's a really large picture. So let's make it smaller. So here's a picture. And of course, the same thing, if I now go into Photoshop and change my picture, it will of course update as soon as I save it in Photoshop. So those are only linked elements that, and you can see it also here, they look different, they have the square bracket, they are linked from the original file, and when you update the file, it will also update your your After Effects file. And the last thing that I would like to show you now is what are the simple ways to create shapes in After Effects directly. Let me kick out all those things, and I'm still having an empty composition, basically the text that is turned invisible. So the shapes that we can use in After Effects directly. You can see that right next to the text tool up here, you have the rectangle tool, and when you hold your mouse on it, you will get the rectangle with rounded edges, ellipses, polygons, or a star tool. And if you want any general shape, you can also use the pen tool here to create different shapes. So the first thing, let's create a rectangle or two here. It is important when you create a rectangle that you don't have selected any other layer. So don't select any movie, any picture layer, or anything else. We're gonna do that in the next session. But for right now, I'm just creating a rectangle. When you draw a rectangle, you can see right away that it works when it says shape layer. So it automatically creates its own shape layer. The parameters for the rectangle can be anytime changed, just like in Illustrator. So you can go into the rectangle, you find the stroke has a certain color. So here's the color, the stroke, the opacity, how thick it is, what color, how it ends, and so on. And if you have dashes or not, And the second thing is the fill color. Here's the fill color. The opacity, is it slightly transparent, and so on. So this shape can be adjusted. And on top of everything, this rectangle, of course, can be transformed. So you can go to, you can just transform it, rotate, scale, and so on. Also adjust maybe its anchor point, because the anchor point is outside of the rectangle. I would rather have the anchor point inside my rectangle. So the anchor point is maybe better somewhere here. Okay, so that is just a simple rectangular shape. Let me delete that quickly and try some other shapes. The most general shape that you can do is the pen tool. And the pen tool, remember, nothing should be selected. And when you use the pen tool, you can draw any shape you like, either with corners, like I did here, or even with round shapes by clicking and dragging the handle of the shape. So like this. So it again is placed on a shape layer, and this shape can be adjusted, fill color, line color, can be transformed, and so on. Everything else, thickness, color, and so on, can also, you have to try it, could also be able to animate it, and so on. So these shapes can be, you can just work with them just like in Illustrator. So the simple shapes is quite a good way to do it this way. But the shapes are usually used for something else. They're used for masking something and so on. But I would like to show you that in our next session, where we talk about masks, how to use masks, and how to place them on different elements. Okay, I hope you had fun and liked what I was showing you. Please follow me on the channel. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you see every new episode. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you in the next one.